Okay, a warm welcome to everybody that's joined us today at the GDLN Roundtable. It's the first GDLN meeting of 2022, so it's great to see so many have joined us today. We are recording this session, so we'll share this with everybody after. Even those that have registered who couldn't attend will get a copy as well. So we hope everybody's doing well in 2022. We seem to have a mix of people back in the office or at home. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go ahead. This is a really open forum. We're really looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts and comments and sharing ideas on what's happening in your law firm. You do have the chat panel available, so do please keep putting your thoughts into chat. We have audio available, so thanks all for muting your lines at the moment. Do bring yourself off mute when you want to give us any comments or any thoughts or ask any questions, but keep the chat going as well. Joanne and I will keep checking that and see what's coming in. We've also got reactions as well, so feel free to use those. Briefly, just to introduce myself, I'm Rachel Baden. I'm normally found at Squire Patton Boggs, heading up the technology training team there. I've been involved with LTC4 for about 10, 11 years, so currently on the board and one of the contributing members.
Hi, everyone. So happy to see everybody here. My name is Bonnie Buth. I'm the chair of the board of directors for LTC4. I'm one of the founding members, and I'm also a contributing member. My day job is Ford Harrison, so I handle largely the entire training process at Ford Harrison. I wanted to give you a little bit of background for those of you that may be new to the GDLN meetings. GDLN was formed in 2020 to help connect the global training and legal education community. 2020, as you know, 2021, such challenging years and so many differences in the way legal education took place. And we thought it was important for people even beyond the LTC4 family to get together and talk about these things. So that's how LTC4, or rather how GDLN was formed. I want to pass it on now to Joanne. Most of you know Jo. She's with Humber Associates and with LTC4.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all, and be talking to you later. First of all, we'd like everyone that's joined just to say hello and tell us your name and who you work for and your role. So please start. Let's see, who can we put? Rob Carwick. Why don't we ask you first of all, Rob, to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Rob Carwick. I'm also on the board of LTC4 and a contributing member. I am the director of user experience at Millbank, where I'm over training, support, the desktop, and basically a lot of aspects of the technology skills at the firm. So thanks. Happy to be here.
And next person I see is Marnie. Hi, Marnie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My name is Marnie Beach, and I work for Myers Nave, and I'm the user experience training manager. I wear a lot of hats. I do all the training for the firm. My background is a legal secretary. I did that for many, many years in civil litigation, and so that leads me to wear many hats in the firm, working closely with the staff and all areas of the firm, just trying to implement procedures and get things running smoothly with the various groups and practice groups at our firm.
Thanks, Marnie. Anyone else like to say hello?
Sure. This is Kathy Rosenbaum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am in Washington, D.C., but I work for Morgan Lewis and Bacchius, a global firm. I'm the firm technology education manager and have, as many of you, as at least a few that I've heard so far, I have many hats as well. It's a total pleasure to be working with everyone and dealing with all the departments and the practice groups and coming up with monthly training schedule of chunked up information and creating our quick reference guides, as well as providing a blended learning approach. So a very
Thanks a lot.
pleasurable, fun job. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We've got such a lot of people on the call. I think it's looking like it might be better just if you could just put your name in the chat and the firm, so that we can then come back to you when you want to contribute to the conversation. So we're going to move on now to talk on a more general open forum, and I'm going to hand over to Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. We know that everybody's got different ways of getting back in the office these days. So we're curious to know from you, are you back in the office? Are you back in the office some of the week, not all of the week? You know, use the chat or you can just use the reactions panel and click the little green check mark if you guys are back in the office. We'd kind of like to get a feel for how everyone's doing it. At Fort Harrison, it is relative to the office, honestly. We have our offices spread all over the US, and in some states, based on the rules in those states, everybody's working from home. In some states, it is a rotating basis. In the Atlanta office, largely our paralegals and staff are back in the office. So let us know from you. Oh gosh, I see everybody signing in. Love to see you signing in. Yvette, Brenda, Linda, great to have you here. So what is your work from home? What is your firm's work from home policy? So hybrid, but role dependent, that makes sense, Marnie. Two days in the office, 2 from home. Yeah, most of them are hybrid. You know, I'm going to skip ahead. We have a hybrid learning plan in LTC4. I'll talk to you about at the end that speaks to that. So I think that's the way it is for most people. It's hybrid. That's what I'm seeing. 50% in the office, working from home, all training delivered remotely. Oh my gosh, that's Fort Harrison. That's been Fort Harrison for years, honestly. Hybrid. Yeah, a lot of you are hybrid. Lita, hybrid. And Rachel, remote training and then hybrid working. So that sounds like pretty much what everybody's doing. Yeah, everybody's saying all training is remote. Gosh, this is the biggest change in our industry, isn't it? It used to be that was complained about. So I remember when I first needed to do all remote training because I was in a situation in my personal life where I couldn't travel. You know, it was something I really had to sell. But once, especially our attorneys, got used to this idea of having recorded content or being able to log in at times that, you know, I couldn't have accommodated if I was doing it in person. So I could do the same training in multiple cities at different times. And it really expanded the number of people who attended my training to attend remote training. And now it's just the norm. Okay.
Yes, quite a few people are saying that people are preferring remote training at their firms, which is interesting too.
I think there are so, yeah, like I've seen in my own firm, I think there are so many situations where it accommodates a schedule. So anybody want to go off mute and talk about their specific remote training or their specific, you know, hybrid working environments?
Everybody's very shy.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to our.
Let's go on to the next. Yeah.
So here's a question, you know, in the last few years, a lot of firms like my own have really shut down what we're moving forward, right? But we have some major rollouts that may be planned toward the end of 2022. How about the rest of you? You can use the chat, you can unmute. Major rollouts? Oh gosh, Lita says that you never stopped. I know a lot of firms that never stop. That's pretty good. So worksite 9.3 to work 10, Yvette. Marnie, I manage work 10. We're going to I manage work 10 as well. Let's see, Catherine Rosenbaum, never stopped. Yeah, I hear you. I manage work 10 for Jackie Armstrong. So Latera DocX for Lita. Yeah, so a lot of these things are things Fort Harrison are doing as well. So let's see, Dave Patterson is saying new finance and HR systems. Rachel, hardware refresh, including iManage, other new desktop apps, Asima, Work 10, MS Teams, Office 365. That's another one that's really common. Rob is saying NetDocs redesign, Office 365 and Outlook. Yeah, you talked about that, Rob, in one of our other meetings. So 3E upgrade for Danielle. Yeah, so a lot going on this year. Anybody want to unmute and chime in on that? We'd love for this to be, you know, a roundtable type environment where everybody participates if you're willing.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Hi, it's Heather.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So we did the Work 10 upgrade during this past year. So we finished that. And we've got a huge amount of like little tiny upgrades. I have got this like long ass list of products that need to just be updated. And they really have been shy about not wanting to do, you know, upgrades while people are away. But at some point, we do have to keep up with the software updates. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll chime in too.
Okay.
This is Andrea from Better Price. So we went to iManage Work 10 right before COVID, which was a blessing and a curse all at the same time. But because of that, we have to re-roll it out. So we're actually planning on doing firm mandated training to make sure everybody is grasping the skills of iManage. And so that's coming very soon.
Yeah, that's a big undertaking.
This is Kathy Rosenbaum. Andrea, I'm really interested in hearing what version you went to and why you have to redeploy. And when you say mandatory, are you starting with everyone mandatory?
Yeah, I don't remember what version we went to. We're on the most current version right now, 10 point something. So we mandated training 2 years ago. It was all live in person. Everybody in the firm had to do it across all of our offices, attorneys, paralegals, secretaries. And just recently, our executive committee put out a memo saying that firm mandated training was going to be happening again because we're having issues with people that still just aren't adapting to iManage. They're saving documents locally. They're not filing their emails. We recently turned off the ability to save documents to their local folder, so they no longer can. It forces them to save to iManage. So what exactly that training program is going to look like, we're working with some contractors to help assess like what our usage is, and that's going to determine our learning plan.
Great, thank you.
So Heather, well, one question for you, Andrea, that came into the chat is, how did you get your executive committee on board with mandatory training? And I would imagine some of what you just said contributes to that.
Yeah, scare tactic. We had a couple issues happen. So the EC decided that everybody needed to go back to training because they just weren't adapting to the systems. So we had a couple issues happen at the end of last year where people couldn't access documents because they were saved locally and somebody was out on a medical leave. And then we had another issue where people hadn't saved their emails. Our Outlook deletes emails after 2 years. So that became an issue. And so we're kind of using that scare tactic of this is what happened. This is how much it could cost. This is how much it cost in that case. And so therefore we have to make sure everything's in iManage.
And Heather, I was going to ask you to unmute. You indicated in the chat that you guys removed it after 9 months.
We're going to. So you can leave desk site. I've been with the firm just as long as they've had iManage, and they are really attached to that old dialog box for searching for documents. They have to let go of searching the old way. They have to adapt to the new way where it's more like Google to find documents. And it definitely has been a battle. Once people do actually use it for about 2 or 3 weeks where they're not going back to the old, they go, oh, I actually like this better, but it's getting them to let go. So we've had to spend a lot more time going back and training because they let them keep it. So my advice is like set a deadline, like, hey, you only have it for a month, and get rid of it, because they will always go back to what's familiar. And that's true of all of us, right? I had to actually unpin mine to force me to not launch it. And but that would be my advice, is to get rid of the desk site. Even though it's compatible, it does cause problems, and then they just don't ever learn the new system because they're able to go back to the old system, but the integrations don't work. So there's a lot of integration points that don't work. So things like DocuSign and comparison, and so then your support tickets go up. Our support tickets have been really high all the way along until probably the last month. We're seeing a decrease in support tickets, and that's just crazy. But if they had not had the old to fall back on, I think we could have addressed all of it very quickly and just been moved on with our lives. Not kind of this back and forth.
Well, that sounds like great advice. I'm going to remember that. I don't think
Bonnie. Oh, I was just going to say,
go ahead.
One thing that that I learned from an iManage forum was we didn't want to go to 10.2. So we're going to iManage 10.4 because 10.2 doesn't have the tree view. So going to that forum has just been great. I could take that back to the firm. So I'm not sure what versions people are going with, but we've been told to avoid 10.2 because you're going to end up with users who will just not be able to use it.
I delayed the project a year because 10.2 sucked.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we can't do this. So we ended up on 10.3. I would advise definitely 10.4 because they were, anytime I write, hey, we had this issue, they go, oh, we fixed it in the next version. So once we go to the cloud, then it's never going to be an issue because we'll always be on the latest version.
Hey, Mary Frederick is saying that they had a hard time making the switch on iManage. Do you want to speak to that? Do you mind speaking to that?
Sure. So we rolled out iManage Work in December of 2019, right before COVID. And our big issue at the time, iManage's search capabilities were extremely different between the work panel in Outlook and the web interface. So a lot of our training centered around teaching people the differences. We only have a 1-year retention policy in Outlook, so it's extremely important for people to file things in the work panel by clicking and dragging and using some of those strategies. But when we rolled it out, advanced search didn't exist in the work panel in Outlook. So you could only do an advanced search for the documents and emails combination in the web interface. Now iManage has kind of made those searching capabilities a little bit more balanced and equal between those two.
Great, that's great information. And a lot of what's coming up, Joanne, if we want to go to the next slide, a lot of what's coming up in here is the impact of training. And so having to revisit training and that kind of thing. So, the question that comes up is, do you have any way of measuring your user adoption following training? Is it all just help desk ticket related, or do you have any kind of ROI methods in place?
We have a product called Eternity that provides a report of who's launching what. So that was really helpful for seeing who was still using desk site. And we do a month report, so it would tell us, hey, 180 times this person launched it within a month, and they're at the top of our list of who to go after and do training, right? And then we kind of, if they only launched it 10 times, we considered that kind of an accident. And so we kind of just look at the report, which goes back to that whole thing of like, I got to get rid of it because they're just going to go back to it.
What was the name of that software?
Eternity, I think it's ATTERNITY. But your teams also might have another way to identify those apps that are being launched.
Yeah, I mean, for NetDocs we did, but does it do other applications? So we use NetDocs as our DM, and they use the measure of how many people are logging into the system every day, how many documents are getting saved into the system.
Right.
So they have all kinds of measures around that, but that one's easy. That's like low hanging fruit. iTimekeep was low hanging fruit. It was real easy for them to see who's going in, putting in their time. But I feel like we have so many other applications that we want people to adopt that we don't have a good way to measure, are they actually using it? We can say they went to training, we can show a reduction in tickets, but that doesn't mean they're actually using it. So I would love to hear if anybody, I don't know if this Eternity can do that kind of thing.
Yes,
or
Eternity can do that. But also if you guys have Latera products, Latera can generate a monthly report for you too, to show
all
usage.
Latera products?
All Latera products.
Okay.
Just have to bug them to get it.
Okay.
You can get a monthly report on that. And that's been very helpful for seeing who's using DocX tools. And we have content companion. And so I can see who my top users are and know where I need to go and train more.
We're about to roll that out. So that would be helpful. So you don't need this Eternity tool for that. Because I was curious about, like, does it even do add-ins within,
yeah, I'm not positive, but I know I can get reports on who's launching what from that, and then I can get the Latera,
So Marnie says that she's going into Intellic and as her LMS, and she's going to do reporting and surveys and that kind of thing. And then Kendall said you use NextThink that can show computer downtime, login speeds, and any kind of campaign you want to write. Do either of you want to speak to that in terms of getting user adoption or any kind of ROI with training?
This is Marnie. Intellic, I haven't launched it yet. I'm just learning the system and I'm getting ready to. So I'm really excited about all that's going to give. Something I've been using for quite some time, and I think I'll still continue to do it, even with our learning management system, is just little homework assignments. It's just been really valuable to give people little, and I don't call it homework, I just call it practice. And they're just very short practice assignments after trainings with a demo document, and very simple, maybe 5 instructions on what to do. And then they just email it to me. It's a little bit time consuming, obviously, to look that over, when they send it to me, but we're not that large of a firm that I can't do it. And that has really, really shown whether people are actually getting it. They attend the training, but can they actually put it into practice? Can they do it? That's been really valuable for me.
I have actually used those as well. I typically have reserved them for people who are particularly struggling, but yeah, I've done that as well. And it's very telling whether or not they understood what you said to them or understood the concepts. Okay, let's see. How are we going on time, Joanne? Do we want to spend more time here or move on?
We're good. We're good.
I'm going to say, I'd be interested to hear from Kendall on that NextThink.
Yes,
that's quite interesting.
Sure. Yeah, we haven't calculated ROI from a training perspective on it. What we're using it for in the IT department is to look at performance, especially with the move to the hybrid environment. Is it a problem with your internet? Is it a problem with the VPN? So the service desk can use it to see if there are suddenly a whole bunch of service alerts going off at the same time in a particular area. But we can narrow it down to see adoption. We're moving to Teams chat soon, and how many people have installed it. When we were cutting off Internet Explorer 11, how many people have actually still gone in and used it, and for what reason? So we're able to pinpoint our communications a little more clearly.
That sounds great. And Heather said that they use Eternity to also report on those kinds of things, and that they also do test documents. So that sounds really interesting. Very common concept.
Yeah, definitely those. I've not heard of those two before, so I'm going to take a look at those. That's really, really useful. Thank you.
Talking to ECP today.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel at this point. She's going to continue with some of our other initiatives.
Yeah, we're just interested to know, do you get buy-in and support from the right people for any of your training initiatives? So whether we're talking full-scale projects or just any initiatives you want to do from the training side, do you get stakeholder buy-in? Do you have to do it? How do you go about it? So it'll be interesting to see, you know, what people are doing. So again, like we've been doing, you can start to put your thoughts into chat, or if you want to sort of give us your comments, just raise your hand and we can come to you.
Oh, Lida, can you tell us how you managed to get buy-in and support from the right people? Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Honestly, really, it just depends on what the project is and what the goal is and the initiative. I mean, I know when we did our assessment program for assistants, we knew it was really important to get a managing partner on board because, you know, the assistants run to their partners and then the partners run to the managing partners and go, no, we don't want to do this. Why are we doing this? And so we, thought it was really important. And actually, when we rolled that out, we got a sponsor from the managing partners to say they were interested in, supporting the program. And then we even presented it all to partners first. So yeah, I think it's super important to do that. Right now, we're doing a program for, we're trying to focus more efforts on helping attorneys this year. That's kind of one of our goals. They're notorious for skipping out on training and not adopting. And the firm has a no opt-out policy now. You're not allowed to opt out of firm technology. And so, we're goal this year. So we've worked with the Technology Adoption Committee, which is made up from attorneys from different practice groups, and leveraging their ideas. One of the things I've learned is if you make your idea their idea, it works so much better. So, I've been working with them. We're hoping to roll out a program this year around that. And that has also been presented to the managing partners and our chief operating officer. So they're all like on board. We'll be working with practice group directors to make sure that, it gets socialized, that people leverage it, take advantage of the services that we're offering. So that's something new. We'll see how that goes. We've actually, as you could hear, are working with a lot of different groups of people to try to get that into play. So yeah, at any major initiative, we try to get somebody to kind of be the sponsor or help us, plan it out and roll it out. Just depends on what we're doing.
And you get that sort of top-down approach then, don't you, as well? Like you say, you're getting buy-in from everybody and they feel it's their idea that you're rolling out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get what you want. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Lydia. Tracy, Tracy from MoFo. Tracy Foster, would you just give us your thoughts? You just put in that it's getting better, but you've had very little buy-in from IT management, but the firm's hired L&D manager. Just want to give us a little bit of information on that, Tracy.
Yeah, before any training initiatives were strictly IT, and it was like, trying to push a rock uphill in the mud and flip-flops to get buy-in from anybody. But like I said, the firm recently has recognized the importance of training, just not IT, but overall, and they've hired these positions. And so now that gives me another avenue to go down when I need to maybe get training to be mandatory. Like I said, we're rolling out Latera Forte, and trying to emphasize the importance. Staff's always gone along, and I saw somebody else in the chat comment, you can usually be pretty successful with staff, but attorneys is a whole nother animal, and just having these positions to kind of champion IT's initiatives has been really, really helpful.
And I was going to say, because Mary had commented on that and about leveraging CLE, saying that it can be difficult, but that's quite an interesting point. Is anybody leveraging, the CLE for technology training now? Some of the different bars in the US states are advocating that technology training is CLE worthy.
Yeah, I'll pop in on that, Rachel. You know, it's been something that we were very successful at before. And speaking in terms of attorney training, what I discovered was the best way to get them engaged. And it isn't like, you know, I have the answer to all of it, because we still have people in my firm who are resistant. But the way that we get them engaged is to make sure that the content is very short and directed, something that they can complete on their own. Largely works better than forcing them to come to class. So those are a couple of things that have worked for us. Of course, the CLE, if you attach CLE to a course, you have different requirements depending on the state. And so that may change how long they're in training, whether you're doing in-person training and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, for my attorneys, if it's short, they're on board.
I think, Rob,
Jackie, I just noticed Jackie here said that COVID actually helped them to get an extra resource, because it was recognized that training was really important. I don't know whether you, Jackie, you'd like to tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, that's right. So when we did we had an agile working mirror boarding group towards the beginning of COVID that was set up, and various people from the whole of the firm, and we were split into different groups. And one of the groups was looking at how to make sure that people are being efficient when they're working from home, which is obviously what a lot of people are doing now. And one of the things that stood out most was that people needed more training on it. And to do that, we needed more resource. So we ended up getting an extra person, which has been great. So it's meant we can do other things as well. We are keeping most of our training online. Well, it is all online still at the moment, although there has been talk now that they might want to try and, or they do want to try and get the office occupancy back up to 50% now that the restrictions have been lifted. So we're hoping that that doesn't mean for training, because we just can't do it so easily in the office. Like a lot of people have said, we end up, but people don't turn up. They do turn up for remote training, but they don't always turn up for in-person training. So we'll see what happens, but that's where we are.
Just noticed Kendall was asking, how do you get CLE for strictly tech learning? And I think, Rob, you said you could speak to that. So Rob, I think you've been doing some.
Well, it's interesting. I got two stories. One, I have done 2 NetDocs rollouts, one at my last firm and one at this firm. And this thing about getting buy-in and support or CLE credit makes a huge difference. At the last firm, a member of the technology committee set all the communications. The tech committee themselves and risk management committees were very actively involved. And we got about 60% training attendance, but I think that's actually pretty good from what some of us see sometimes. And I can't remember if we got CLE or not. I know we looked at it. At my current firm, we thought we were doing even better at getting buy-in, because we were going to each of the practice group leaders and saying, we did focus groups. So here are the changes we're making to NetDocs. What do you think? Can we come up with like filing guidelines that are specific to your practice? And they were mostly on board. But what happened was they lost interest because it took so long to roll it out with COVID and in general. And the other thing we learned is sometimes the practice group leader on paper is not the right person. Sometimes they're not the most influential. What you really need is maybe a senior associate who's really tech savvy. And we had the same problem getting CLE. We had wanted to do CLE, but the time commitment it was going to take, because one of the requirements was to have a lawyer at least introduce the course. We couldn't find people who would be willing to do that. So it can be really hard, but think about who the right people are. Is it your professional development team and people who teach on CLE, or is it something else?
Yeah, for us, Rob, in some states, because we did exclusively online content that wasn't public, we couldn't get CLE. So it depended on the states. And Kendall, I put this in the chat, but if you'll send me an email, I'll kind of give you some guidelines on how I went about it. Yeah, it can be challenging to get the CLE, but sometimes it does make it easier to get people in training. It just depends.
Okay, I mean, we did CLE for just for Florida for our managing documents and emails course. And it, there's quite a lot of work to do, but it was interesting to see how many more lawyers actually engaged with it and then asked for it, because that was a way that they could gain some CLE when they needed it towards the end of the year. We've not gone out any further because we know how many states it is, but it's interesting to see what people have done, and it costs as well, doesn't it? There's a cost attached when you each year. I think is it about $45? Can't remember what it was. I don't know if each state is different, but there's obviously a cost attached to that, and it lasts sort of 2 to 3 years. So it's a continuous cycle, isn't it?
This is Kathy from Morgan Lewis. I find that CLEs, it was not the best route for us to be able to get more attorneys to class. It seemed that more attorneys attended if there was a greater impact on them directly. If they really needed to have what it is, the product that we are putting out there. For example, I would expect that a lot of work 10 attendance would be great because definitely impacts them directly. So our attendance goes up and down depending on what it is that we are rolling out. And we're kind of an institution, luckily, at the firm. And we start all of our programs with the project management office. And that project management office has a checkoff list of all the departments and how they might be involved in the project. The head is always there. And then we determine to what degree we need to help out and how much training we need to give. So it kind of works in tandem with the management, so we get the support automatically that we need. We provide the schedule, the program, the content, the reference guides, tips, and all that. So we work really quite well together in terms of that. And attendance is quite good. And Rob, I heard you say 60%, and we go up and down from 50 to 80, depending on what the product is. So we're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I would just jump onto that one of the things we did for the bigger projects that, we knew really everybody needed to attend the training was to have a dashboard that management could look at to see who was attending and who wasn't. And kind of, they could look at it different ways, by practice group, by role, by whatever. And so they could kind of, target and follow up with people if they felt like it was somebody they wanted to. And I think that helped. And then there's a little bit of competitive nature too, when that gets shared with the practice group leaders, because they're like, wait, why is only 20% of my group, but I see over here, this other group is at 75%. I need to, get on board and get my team, so we leveraged that a bit too.
It would be interesting to know the UK firms that we now don't have CPD, as it's called here, what they're doing about getting people to attend training so that they improve their skills. Is it part of professional development, or is there any requirement for a certain number of hours for technology training?
Joanne, there's not hours at the moment, but they're talking about changing that again.
Are they?
Currently, it's just anything that you can point that is enriching you in your career. So at our firm, for the UK anyway, we just make sure every course has the code to time record it to, and then they can reflect on it in their PD plan. So any reading, in fact, it can be easier, but there is.
But there's no central body that's monitoring that.
Well, yeah, they still have to, put that in. But the solicitors regularly, you still have to do it, but it's not a minimum number of hours. You've just got to prove. But I think that there's talk of that changing again, and they're looking to go back to points.
Yes, I've always thought it was an interesting decision to stop the CPD requirement, because it was definitely an incentive quite often for particularly lawyers to attend training when you were struggling to get them to come. So topics generally from the chat, this is really open to you to ask anything you'd like to the assembled people. I'm looking at the chat here.
I don't know if this is helpful, but Deb and I were having a little offline chat. She wanted to know what we created our dashboard in, and it was done in Smartsheet. And I would send a comma delimited file to our, I mean, they probably could have automated it if we needed to, but we just did it on a weekly basis of everybody who had attended training. And then they kind of built the dashboard, but it didn't just include training. It included tickets from the service desk, install issues. You know, it was kind of like an overall dashboard for management, so they could see how the rollout was going. And then they could also tie, you know, they could look and go, oh man, this person keeps calling. Did they ever attend training? And then they could see right from that dashboard and make that connections. Hey, can someone up from training follow up this person and get them the training they need? So it was kind of like but it was all built in Smartsheet, and the data came from various sources. So just sharing that in case it's helpful.
Sherry Simonian is asking what assessment tool is being used by everyone.
I could jump in.
Yeah, there was a conversation earlier that someone was using an assessment tool for the secretaries. I'd love to know.
Yeah, we use live content from Intellic. It used to be Tutor Pro, but we're actually going to be moving to their new tool. They're phasing out live content. Their new tool is called Atlas, and it's all cloud-based. And I'm looking forward to trying that. It looks super cool. That's our project. One of our projects for this year is to update all our assessments with the new tool.
I'm curious about the assessments, because what I've run into is most of the ones I've seen are very task driven. Basically, there's a clue in the question on how to solve it. In other words, insert a table to do X and format it, right? Have you found any assessment tools that have more of a story driven? In other words, here is a brief that your lawyer is giving you and you need to fix the numbering, go.
Actually, and Lida can speak to this too. I also use the Intellic, now called Intellic Create, the Atlas. And it's basically, it was once called Live Content Studio. So it's literally live content, and you can develop that pretty much any way you want to in terms of what you're asking someone. And my particular training is all workflow based. I really don't do features and functions training anymore. I haven't in years. So the Live Content Studio, Intellic Create now gives you the opportunity to create that story and ask them to accomplish it.
That's great, Bonnie. We looked at a tool sounds similar to that. The problem was there wasn't benchmarking, and that's something that our labor employment team is really concerned about. In other words, if somebody comes back and says, I got fired because I got a bad assessment on this, but you haven't proven that it is statistically reasonable. In other words, there aren't 500 other people who have taken this and passed it at this mark in other firms in similar positions. Is benchmarking anything that comes up in any of the firms that are using assessments?
Well, actually, LTC4 might help you with that, because we have a standard for certification. And maybe we should, GDLN is largely for, an open forum. You may or may not be LTC4, but maybe we should talk offline about that, and it might satisfy that need.
But Rob has a question about using LTC4 for onboarding. Maybe Rob, you could explain what.
So to Bonnie's point, yeah, the LTC4 learning paths all basically say here are the specific skills that somebody needs to demonstrate that they have, and so we tend to do a very hands-on version of that, where we give them a document and say, produce this document, and like they have a paper copy and they have to do it digitally. It's more time consuming to proof that way, but we're able to ask everything that's in the learning path and confirm that they've done it. And then, we're not currently getting certification, but we'd like to. And I was wondering if other people were doing that.
Yeah, so we do that as well. So we built our kind of whole assessment program, and we were members, LTC4 members, a while ago, but we had to kind of stop because we had to focus on all these upgrades and things that we were doing for the last couple of years. I don't know if we'll jump back in, but we definitely did more of the workflow approach. So, it's based more around, a real world scenario. And because we're creating them ourselves, they're our firm's real world scenarios using our documents. So it's not generic at all. And it could be, you're starting with an email attachment and you have to save it in DM, and then you have to format the document and you have to produce a PDF in the end. I mean, it could be the whole workflow. And then we turn all those over. All of our new hires have to go through all of those as part of their onboarding. So they sort of have within the first, 30 days, they need to accomplish so much. Within the first 90 days, in the first year, they have to get through so much of the program and pass, the assessments and everything. So we definitely use it with new hire, and they really like it. It was a harder sell with existing staff, but new people like it. They like that they have sort of something that they can follow that helps them learn and grow in their first year.
I was surprised how many people like it. I really thought people wouldn't want to take a test, but the way we delivered it was we had a trainer come in and deliver the training, and then they gave these printed exercises to do, and then we had one of the more senior secretaries do all the grading and to make sure they did it right. 'Cause, right, there's lots of different ways to do things, and that was one of the problem with most of the canned assessments we saw, that they weren't flexible enough on the different ways of doing things. You'd mark somebody wrong when in reality what they did was fine, at least for our purposes. So yeah, and people didn't mind doing it, and especially during COVID, I think there were a lot of people who wanted to A, keep busy, and B, improve their skills, because they really saw the importance of that during this work from home period.
We had a lot of assistants who went back and redid the learning program because we had updated it with the newer version of Office and our newer applications. And we said it wasn't required. They didn't have to go back through it again, but a lot of them did. And I think they liked that refresher and maybe to see what maybe new things they didn't catch in the upgrades.
One of the people who, in fact, hosts our London LTC4 monthly meetings, Sean Claydon from Allen and Overy, he makes sure that all of his trainees do at least 4 or 5 of the LTC4 core competencies and get certified before they, in their early stages of working. And that seems to work really well for him, because obviously it then spreads the skills across the firm, and they take on a lot of trainees every year. So that's how he goes ahead. So we're going to just remind you that the whole idea of the GDLN is that it's a network for anyone who's involved in delivering IT training in legal. Keep an eye on the website, because we're adding things to it all the time. And we'll obviously email you from time to time if there's anything new. We have a partner now with an organization called Novum Learning, who are going to start to present the learning plans for individuals and for small firms who don't necessarily have the resources to deliver the training themselves. And we're also partnering with 1 or 2 organizations that we think feel the same way about us, as like the Learning and Performance Institute, which is very much around learning regardless of the industry. It's not specific to legal. And the Document Excellence Group, which some of you may have heard of and know about. And then we talk to any legal IT training groups. And if you know one in your area, please do get in touch, because we'd like to obviously share with them material and resources that they may be able to share with their group. And likewise, we'll put them onto the website too. We've got some training service providers who are very much on the board with LTC4. As we've mentioned earlier, TutorPro have changed their name, and they're now called Entelec. And this is their new logo and their new brand and their website. And Capensis, who you will have undoubtedly heard about, they're now part of Wilson Allen. So if you need to get in touch with them, and iTrain Legal is also another LTC4 training service provider who can provide either contractors to help your training or online content. So we're very pleased to have them on board with us. Trainer Talks, I think the latest one is actually just been put onto the website today, but we do try to keep those up to date, and you can go back into YouTube and see some of the earlier ones. But that's always interesting, because it's talking about the experience of each of you. working on at the coal face, as I say. Other resources, we do occasionally get some very interesting articles published by the legal technology media, and we will be putting recordings, obviously, of this meeting and other events that we're involved with onto that resources page. Twitter and LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. There's a group in LinkedIn, and that's quite a useful resource as well. And we've got, I think, nearly 500 members for that group. So if you do want to share any of your questions or issues, it's a great place to post because we know that people are looking at that. And then obviously Twitter, if you're a tweeter, that's our hashtag. So it's at LTC4 Core Comps. I don't know whether you were aware of the effectiveness project. We talked about it at our last roundtable. Effectiveness project is a project that's been taken about 18 months in its development, and it's available through the LTC4 website, but it's basically a project which establishes best practice and baseline skills for creating effective legal documents. When you go onto the website, it's got its own page, and it provides you with an opportunity to download any section of the document. There are 7 modules, so some of them might be relevant for you when you're doing specific training, and it's all about really improving document drafting, the quality of documents, taking them really to a much higher level. So it's an important area, and we're working to develop the next phase of this project as it happens. So just have a look at the website, and if you wanted to have a look at any of the modules, you can click on the links and it'll take you to the individual modules. 2 new learning plans. I'm going to hand over to Bonnie now, talk about how they're going.
Yes, you know, we responded to the changes in the industry. The first question that we had was about hybrid working. So everyone's doing hybrid working in one form or another, and our hybrid working learning plan has become quite popular. In addition, our video conferencing, which really speaks to this new online world we live in, remote access world we live in. And I want to make a specific point because this came up several times today. Our learning plans are, the LTC4 learning plans are what we call agnostic, application agnostic. So in other words, they're designed in such a way that you can apply whatever your firm policies are, whatever your applications are that you use to those learning plans in order to develop and roll them out. Joanne, you want to go to the next slide? So another thing that we do in LTC4, just for any of you who might be interested, is each year, you know, we look at what our licensees are looking for, and we create some sort of discount around that so that our licensees get really what they need, and we try to respond to the market every year. This year, we have the ability to buy a 2-year license at a discount. So, you know, you don't have to worry about next year, whether renewing when you're in the middle of rolling out, you know, certification or learning plan. We also realized that some firms, you know, want to create their own packages. They usually purchase more than 1 learning plan at a time. So you can get a discount if you get a 2 competency learning plan or 2 learning plans, or if you buy 3 learning plans at once, you can get discounts for those as well. So, you know, we're always looking for situations. We've definitely done ad hoc discounts. We're always looking for situations where we can sort of be there for the industry and respond in the way that you all need it. Our website is www.ltc4.org, org because we're a nonprofit. That's where the shop is. And And note the GDLN email address. So GDLN, Global Digital Learning Network at LTC4.org. We want to hear your thoughts. You know, if you have other things you'd like to see in these roundtables, shoot us an email. If you have questions about our learning plans or discounts for LTC4, shoot us an email. If you'd like to be in a trainer talk, we're always looking for people who will contribute some piece of information. You know, several of you have shared a lot of your experience. We'd love to put one of those in a trainer talk, and you can email GDLN for that. So I want to open it up. I know we've had a lot of participation today, which we've really appreciated. Just before we end, do any of you have any questions? You know, unmute and jump in, or feel free to submit them in the chat. And I guess I'll also share, reach out to Rachel and Rob. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to share with the group?
No, not from me, but I just saw like you lots of opportunities for trainer talks with some of the things that were coming into chat that would be wonderful to share with the whole global community. Would be brilliant. Only other thing is I think we'll have another GDLN. We're doing these once a quarter. So as soon as we've got a date for that, we'll get that out to everyone. So you've got a placeholder in your diaries. But it's been wonderful today. Thank you to everyone. It's been brilliant. Yeah.
I want to answer a question for Sherry. Sherry said for LTC4 certification, the website that said there's a form to be completed, but you don't see it. As you're licensed to get a core competency, you're provided all of that documentation. So, and you feel free to contact info@ltc4.org. You can contact any of us personally, myself, Rachel, or Rob, or the GDLN email to get more information about that. Hey, Janice, it's good to see you too. Glad you joined us. Andrea, very welcome. Happy to have you with us. And Kendall, let me know if you want any more information about the CLE. Okay, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. Let us know what you want to talk about. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.